I'm just going to roll straight into today. I usually do a big intro, but I will just say for everyone that is new here, please give us a like and subscribe. It's how we grow. I do appreciate you coming along to this show. And if you've come back again, as I always say, I love you. We're back, the Unlaced podcast, for another episode. And been laughing already before this one started because this is with one of my, I'd say good friends from back when I was younger, playing in the youth ranks of the soccer world anyway in Australia, but more now known for playing for the Socceroos in his career in Europe and Asia, and now back in the A-League, is prolific goal scorer Adam Taggart. I got him there with the prolific. There we go.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jay.
Yeah. How are you, bro?
Yeah, I'm good. Very good. Very happy to be back and get some normality in. So yeah, buzzing.
Was it when you say normality, was it starting to get like weird or boring in Asia, or particularly
not
where
starting? It's I mean, the way it starts is a bit like that.
Yeah.
Obviously very, very different culture. And you're sort of trying to go with the things that you know, but you know, you're obviously dealing with people that have been brought up and think a very different way. So, you know, there's a lot of challenges, and at the start it's all new and it's funny and whatever, and after a while it can get a little bit more frustrating.
Really?
You know, the normal side of you just wants to really enjoy life the way that, you know, you've been used to. So yeah, a lot of challenges, but you know, it was a interesting 4 years. Good graft, and yeah, a lot of good funny stories.
Yeah, what time are you going to release today? Or are they vaulted, are they?
Yeah, well, lots vaulted, but yeah, I'll release some.
Well, before we go into some of those, like talking about the now, why did it feel right to come back to the A-League One and then obviously Perth? Because my assumption is you would have had other offers. So why here?
Yeah, I mean, look, Perth's obviously my home. You know, it goes back onto a little bit, you know, what I was touching on before in terms of like a bit of normality. And I guess when you're in those places and going through those things that you go through while you're over there, you sort of really crave that feeling of home and feeling of belonging. And, you know, Perth's a place for me. I grew up here. I've got all my family and friends here. You know, I'm someone who has like a good social circle, and, you know, that's important to me as well. You know, obviously outside of all the football stuff. So just felt right to come back and, you know, especially after grafting away for 4 years and in countries where they don't speak the same language and obviously live the same way as us. You know, it was a big craving for me to come back home and you know, enjoy my time on Earth.
Yeah, you know what? Is this because you played in Perth? You played for Perth like a couple of times before. You've been at Brisbane, like you played obviously here for a while throughout your career, but now are you like fucking buzzing because you value everything more because of your experience in Asia? Like like walking around town, like speaking, like going to Cottesloe, all that shit. Like, yeah, it's so, does it hit different?
It hits very different.
Really? That's fucked.
The gratitude I feel every day is
grateful.
Every time I come back to Australia, the first time I walk into Woolworths, I almost start crying. You know?
She's about to tear up as you saying this.
I've been with mates before walking through Woolworths, and they're pissing themselves. I'm this emotional wreck just walking through, just saying, "Fucking hell! Look at the state of that stuff." You know, like you can actually read what it is. Like, you know what you're getting. It's a fucking. You feel like you're in heaven. Walking
do you know
what?
You know, people. This is why like people that play national sport, domestic sports in Australia at the highest level, they don't understand that. Like little things like that, just reading fucking food at the markets and not knowing what the fuck it is so infuriating.
It's you honestly can't believe it. Like you know, going through those times in, you know, obviously in Asia, walking through grocery stores or walking into a cafe, like the difficulties you run into and like the frustration that you sort of have walking through there, and you're walking around with your Google Translate thinking, what the fuck's this, you know? Like,
jeez, man.
I just want a fucking chicken breast.
Yeah.
I don't want anything else. Like, and I want to know what I'm getting. The amount of times you come back home and you're cooking it and you're thinking, nah, that's not steak.
What the fuck have I got?
It's all the small things that you appreciate, and even walking into training, like you have to get used to like actually speaking to people again. You know, you become like a bit of a mute, like you're living in your own world, and you're walking about the training ground, just not even looking up. You're just sort of doing your thing and getting on with it now. Like I'm actually connecting with humans and
because you're like a joker too. Like you love the bands, like
I do love
around
banter,
the training ground. So that would have been hard for you in Asia.
Yeah, like I mean, growing up, you sort of that's just normal. You know, once obviously for us, like we started at a young age. You know, AIS and all the youth teams and stuff like that. It's so normal to have that banter and like that boisterous sort of fun. Yeah, you know, all the time. It's 24/7, isn't it?
Man, literally.
And you sort of once you get that taken away from you, you're sort of like you realize how important that is, and like it's probably one of the most important things in sport. Absolutely, you know, it's the everyday banter. It's walking to the dressing room and people are absolutely shredding each other. Absolutely. You know? Now they're all laughing in Japan and Korea. I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Probably talking about me.
Bro, speaking of laughing, man, you and Mustafa Amini, shout out Musti as well, Captain of the Glory. I don't know where he is. He's supposed to be here, but anyway. You guys in hotels, you could always hear where you guys were from your laughs. Musti in particular, but you would always like take the piss out of like, you'd always have a Taggart or two on tour. And they were like your close friends too, like the guy you were rooming with. And you would just like, you could hear that laugh. You would just find the smallest shit funny with them and it would set you off. I try to think of examples. I can't think of people, but like just that's the kind of person you were. So that's why I say that about you in Asia must have been weird.
It was very weird. You know, you're obviously in your room, you can't talk to no one, you're on your phone. And in Australia, you know, like you said, you got to have a couple of targets.
You're good at that too. I don't even know if you do it consciously. I think you just come out of the tour and you're like that's practically bullying there. Like he's picked a couple of lads and he's really rode them for 3 weeks. But then like after they're like your mates, you love them.
Yeah, I mean you got to test them out at the start, you know. And you
fucking baptism of fire.
You get that feel of someone like who's feeling a bit uncomfortable here. And you sort of go for them a little bit, you know, in a nice, obviously in my head it's nice. And you know, some of the other boys it's probably, you know, just harmless banter. But to them, obviously they might take it to heart for a little bit. But then, you know, in the grand scheme of things, they probably come out of their shell a bit. You know, it's a bit like singing your song when you first go to a team.
Man,
you know? You're meant to be embarrassed before you feel and before you feel comfortable. Yeah, you know, so that's because
you would always be like, so you would always be one of the main players or you know whatever at the times, and sometimes those people were like Corey Brown was a good one, like just young pups. Do you know what I mean? Like young guys that were coming through that weren't there, and you'd be like, no, I'll grab them. And wash him down.
Well, when you've got a ginger in the team, you know, you need to emphasize that he's a ginger.
His laugh too.
But he could take it well.
He could, he could. Corey Brown. Do you remember, like, even with everything you've achieved, which we'll go through, like, do you still vividly remember the AIS and the Young Socceroos days? Like,
yeah, for sure. I mean, especially the AIS and the Young Socceroos. We've got amazing memories. Probably lots that you can't talk about.
Yeah, I've forgotten like some of the ones that I can't talk about. You know,
there was a lot of sneaking out and climbing down balconies.
Balconies, yeah.
I think we had a rope ladder at one stage.
We had people climbing over the balconies too. Like there was like a foolproof system.
It was it was a good system that we had because obviously you have your curfews and you know depending what age you were, it's 10 p.m. and then a year later it's 12 p.m. You know, so there's like a bit of a crossover there with who can be out a couple of hours later and stuff like that and. You had to find your way to escape.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, I remember when you came to the AIS because we'd already been there for like a few months, some of us, and our age group we'd never had a striker. We were like no one could score, and it was like we're supposed to be the top ages, and it was like wasn't good. Like fuck. And then I remember they brought you over from WA, and we like a couple of the boys there knew who you were. And I remember your first session, you just started like it's like what. Man, you players talk about when Van Nistelrooy comes, like every chance you had, you just banged it in. And I remember looking at Gary Van Egmond like, yeah, okay, good. Like, thank fuck. Because I was saying like, bro, we've got no one who can score here. Like, we're the fucking AIS. And like, no one can bang him in. And then they brought you and I was like, you've always like, even from a young age, the way you are now, you're very similar to Jamie McLaren. You're just always banging goals.
Yeah, I mean, I think most strikers, that's all you care about. That's all you think about. You just... From a young age, like you just want to bang in goals. You don't give a shit about fucking touching the ball. You don't even want to touch the ball. You know, you want to be that guy who doesn't touch the ball all game and everyone's saying he's having a beast and then you fucking put one away. And I think you get that that starts from when you're younger, you know, it's like this love for scoring goals. And obviously all our strikers on the field anyway, we're all selfish cunts.
Yeah,
We want to be the one who puts the ball in the back of the net. We want to, score a tap in from 1 yard and run off celebrating like you've dribbled the whole team and bang one in the top corner. It's that sort of love and enjoyment for just banging in goals.
Was that something like that for you? Was very natural coming through, or was that something because you naturally finishing? I assume you might have worked on, but like the instinct of your movements and stuff. I feel like you always had that.
Yeah, I think for me anyway, everyone's probably a little bit different, but that instinct comes from the love of scoring goals and
so it was
taking
just
that
the hunger.
moment. And I think when you're younger, that's all you do. You're in the backyard, like pretending you're scoring in World Cup finals and that. So it's sort of like it's the repetition of just doing it over and over again. And like you watch good players, especially at a young age, you like study these players, like how do they do that, or like what do they look like when they do that, and you just do that all the time naturally, and then it just becomes this instinct. Like now, for example, when we do video sessions and the coach is talking about the movement here and what I did there, and I'm thinking like I didn't even fucking know I was doing it.
You just did it.
It's just sort of like you might not have scored, but it was the right movement to make to sort of like create that space and be in the right position to score if the ball is put in the right spot. But that sort of stuff, like it's always looking back that I think like I don't even think about that, and I'm sure Mac is the same. Like I think sometimes it's spoken about like it's this equation, like you have to do this before you do that. But like a lot of it's just feel and instinct, I guess. And you watch all the strikers, I can guarantee you they don't think about it too much. Like you just sort of do what you do naturally. And, the more you do it, then, the more chances you get.
Yeah. I think one of the things for you as well, why you get so many goals and even Jamie is because a lot of people know the right runs to make at times, but it comes back to that point about being like hungry. You'll make 25 and not get one ball. And then that 26, you might get one on the back post at 89th minute and you were there because you kept going. Like, when some people switch that off, you guys think differently with that.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess that's part of it. Like you got to be prepared to miss. You got to be prepared to not get the ball to score. That's almost like the first step. And a lot of it's like a mentality thing. And, I see so many young boys now will get told you have to make this run when the ball's there, where I think most strikers will almost fuck that off a little bit. And think, well, like it's not really on in that moment. Like I'm not feeling like that run is going to get me a goal or that run is actually going to create a goal. So you sort of like stick to your own beliefs and like what you do best. And I think most of the best coaches normally say that, like they don't want to make it too rigid and whatever. Like you make your run based on your feeling of where the ball is going to go and what you need to do to beat your defender. And you just keep doing it all game. And of course, there's going to be sometimes you go through 90 minutes and you're not going to have one sniff of a chance, but if you keep doing it like over the course of a season, you'll keep banging in goals.
Yeah, absolutely. I reckon personally, and a lot of A-League fans that are tuning in will obviously know your pedigree and your record and stuff, but I think you're like a hugely underrated signing in this season. Like I don't think that's got, like on the East Coast, I don't think it's gotten enough plaudits for what you can potentially do to this squad, and particularly on the trajectory where Perth's kind of starting to move to now. But for you coming back to Perth Glory, what was your sort of first impressions of the squad? And obviously Zadkovic as well as a coach, probably first experience with him, I assume.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd obviously played with Ruben at Newcastle and then when he was at Perth when I came back. So I know him quite well as a person and as a player. And I guess first impressions, like walking into the training ground, I already knew everyone. It was just like coming home. Laugh, yeah. Like obviously you've got Ryan Williams, Jack Clisby, Musty's there from the AIS, Lambo, the kit man, who's a great laugh.
Shout out Lambo.
Yeah. If you're ever bored or like you're not really getting much from anyone else, you just go and sit in the kit room and have a coffee in there, and you have some good chats in there. So it was like, honestly, when I walked in, it was like I'd never left. And, similar to what I'd said before the podcast started, it was like I had these 4, 5, 6 years, where I'm sitting there thinking, fuck, I can't wait to sort of get back doing this. And then like, all of a sudden it happens. And it was like, yesterday I was 24, now I'm nearly 30.
Yeah.
Because it was like this, it was the exact same feeling when I came in the last time. And I think when you love the place and you enjoy the people and you feel comfortable in the city and stuff like that, it's all just it's like you never left. It's all normal, and you just start flowing straight away.
Because that translates onto the field because you've already been like scoring goals.
Yeah,
and do you credit that? Obviously, fitness and stuff's one thing, but like that as well, feeling comfortable, feeling happy.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's actually science behind it. Not that I'm a scientist.
Give us the science now.
The feeling of familiarity.
Right.
And I'm always similar. Like certain stadiums, I always score. Certain stadiums, I always struggle to score.
Does that bother you though? That bothers me because I hate being that guy. I want to be able to I'll just bang one in everywhere.
But I'm a bit weird with all that sort of stuff. Like in terms of like which goal I feel more comfortable at. And before games and stuff like that, sometimes I just go for a walk and just, stand around the goal just to get that familiar feeling.
Yeah.
And I guess it's sort of it's not just the stadium, it's like the surround, like the people around you, like the city and all that sort of stuff. It's a bit like Newcastle Stadium. Like I could have a beast there, but I know I'll score, and I think there was some record there of, I don't know if it's been beaten now, but like it was the one player that scored the most goals there, but it wasn't all playing for Newcastle. It was like half playing for Newcastle, half playing for.
Oh, so are you leading that, or we're leading that?
I was. I don't know anymore.
Well, fuck, man. I don't think anyone's banging in goals every week. So.
Yeah, but it's that feeling of familiarity, which probably translated to that first game.
Yeah,
where I came off the bench,
bang bang,
and like it was just it's a sort of weird feeling. Like you're in this, I don't know, feeling of flow and like this state of normality, where I was just like. I've found anyway when I've gone to other clubs, like the first game, you're like, fuck, get on the ball, make sure the first touch is quality.
Get a goal, like shit like that when you're a striker.
Exactly. And, when I walked onto that pitch, I was sort of like, I don't really give a fuck. Like, I already feel comfortable. I'm just going to go and stand in the positions. I think I only touched the ball like 3 times.
That's awesome, man.
And a couple of goals, and it's that feeling of, comfortable normality, sticking to like what is going to work rather than like trying to do too much. And because as a striker, you can get frustrated and start coming in deep, and then you're trying to create things and do other people's jobs, and then when the ball comes in, you're not there. Because I've found myself doing that before when I've been frustrated, or you have this feeling that you want to do too much. So I think all of that feeling of familiarity. You'll have to check the science.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get to check the stats on this as well.
But I have read about it.
That's crazy. Well, speaking of familiarity.
Yeah, that'll do.
Leave that in. Like obviously Zadkovic. So obviously you played with him, but for me, what was interesting, I never really saw him like being a coach or anything like that. But then the documentary, the A-League do the keep up stuff, like it was real interesting to watch him speak and communicate with the boys. Like what sort of early impressions of him as a coach? Like how's he been in the sort of early games training sessions that you've had?
To be honest, he's actually really similar to what he was as a player.
Oh, really?
I think as a player, he was aggressive. Like I'm sure most other midfielders who have played against him knew they were going to get an absolute smashing.
Well, that's not me. Playing against him wasn't fun.
Yeah, it was, and he's a bit like that as a gaffer, and he wants to sort of instill that on his team. Like he can be really intense at times, but then he put his arm around you when he needs to. And I think for me, like I can probably be a bit misunderstood sometimes. Like sometimes I could turn up a bit pissed off, get frustrated. Sometimes I'm buzzing and happy, like,
you're a bit bipolar.
A bit like that, yeah.
Actually, your Red Mist is some of the greatest stuff. When I played it, I used to love it because I used to get a bit like that too.
Yeah.
It's kind of like lifts everyone up, but you fucking you would let you call out, you're like right winger, like fucking cross that fucking ball in.
Look, I'm still a bit like that.
Yeah, but you won't lose that, I don't think.
But I think people like him understand that, and they sort of
respect
they want to push that a little bit more, because I think they came from an era where that was a lot more normal. I guess you see now it's probably not as normal. And when I went to Korea and Japan, I definitely had to stop doing that because I'll get in big trouble if I did,
Yeah.
And I used to tell people, oh, look, I've definitely calmed down over the last few years. And then as soon as I came back here and I knew I was allowed to do it, first week I was already getting straight back into that.
Nah, mate, that's golden. That's gold. I want to talk about Musti, because we'd known him since we were 15, and he's always been like class clown kind of joker, like always been a top footballer, but could never take him serious. Like off the field, he's always fucking around and stuff. Now as a captain, like it must be
he's still fucking around.
But like, what is he like as a captain? Because like sometimes I can see him being serious and leading by example on the field, but I could never take him seriously because he was so funny.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously a bit like that. And I don't think he's ever going to change. You know, Musti's Musti, and he's got that big laugh running about the changing rooms, and he's always playing cards with the young boys, taking all their money.
Yeah,
he loves that stuff.
He's a gambler and a half, man.
But you watch him on the field, and he's sort of like loud and you know, wants to dominate that sort of like his presence, and wants to like, you know, especially at home, like when you're at Macedonia Park, you can really hear him shouting and just like screaming random stuff to sort of like
bossing it.
Maybe, you know, try and get on the other team's like, you know, mental side a little bit. You know, but he's got both sides to him, which is good. But, you know, definitely away from actual physically on the field or physically, you know, in the game, he's still that same like joker. You know, I can't see him bollocking anyone.
Yeah, he's not his style, is it?
I don't think he's got that in his locker, you know. But
maybe silent treatment or something like that. That's what he'd do.
Yeah. You know, that's what I'd expect from him. But yeah, he's definitely got both sides, just in a different sort of way.
Oh, well, shout out Musti. He's having a good season. I love seeing him do well, because he obviously had a few years with injury and so forth. But when you look back on your career, was Newcastle, or the start of your career, I should say, was for you? Was that where you felt like you broke out? Like you felt like a professional footballer, even though you scored a few goals for Glory and you came back home?
Yeah, for sure. That was obviously like my breakout year. I wouldn't even say year, sort of my breakout period.
You were you were like the lead. You were leading the line up there, like not, because I remember I was coming off the bench playing for Adelaide, and I was like, to lead the line in the A-League back then was fucking hard, man.
Yeah, I mean, it was
good teams, man, back then.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the reasons I went to Newcastle. They wanted to promote these young players, and like you look at that team now of like all the boys that played. They had like Craig Goodwin, like Josh Palante was there. Then you had these older, more senior players like Emil Heskey was there, like Ruben Zadkovic was there.
That's right.
Joe Wilhouse.
Birighitti was keeper.
Birighitti was there. You know,
was Dutchie coach?
Dutchie was coach,
yeah.
And I loved Gary. You know, he's one of those people where like you'd hate him a lot of the time, but like you respected what he was doing, and I liked that sort of old school mentality where like he was fucking on people.
But you couldn't keep. He was a bit like what you were talking about. Like you didn't know what side of the bed he woke up on.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely had some fucking crazy things go on there.
Yeah,
we obviously we did the boot camps at AIS.
Bro, carrying ropes in the ocean at like 16.
Pillowcases over the head and that.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. We were running out at night that was nuts, man. I remember once, like, I got on really well with Gary, like played some of my best football under him. And then I came back from injury once, and like thinking like he's supporting me coming back, and I'm running laps. He called me, he's like, hurry up, you fat Indian. And I don't know if you remember, it just stuck, and I was like, where did that come from? I think he was just on me then after that. And I'm like, I've fucking been injured for like 4 weeks.
Like he
was unpredictable, man.
He was very unpredictable.
Yeah.
Unpredictable, very much on people. And like if you saw a weakness in someone, you know, a bit like what we were talking before, he was on you and he wasn't going to let you go. And I think that, you know, for me anyway, it sort of brought out that man mentality out of people. Like you had to sort of get over those, you know, small things, or you learned how to like take ridiculous criticism and all that.
Yeah,
sort of
we
stuff,
did early. Yeah.
But he was good, especially like if he was on your side, which, you know, for me, most of the time he was. He knew how to bring the best out in people. And, you know, for me anyway, he was someone I always wanted to play for. Like,
yeah, me too.
In that field and I'd be like, fuck yeah, you know, like got big Gaz fucking supporting us here.
Yeah.
And I believed in what he did, and I liked that old school mentality where I think some people didn't like it, you know, and the way the game's going and stuff like that, it's obviously, I think, especially the young players, they find that difficult to deal with, you know, but when we were sort of coming through, we were sort of on the fringe of like, when we still had that old school mentality, just ripping into people.
Cosy, man, John Kazmina, youngies v oldies, like, and just fucking obliterate the youngies and run them.
You know, you had to do your apprenticeship,
you
know, and that's what you know, they actually had the boys doing the washing.
Do you know my first game, one of my first games in the A-League, after we won, it was like round 1 or 2, we had beers in the change room after the game. This is like 2012. We were still doing that then. Like my first thing with John Kosmina, like that is frowned upon now.
It's frowned upon.
But like 10 years ago, we were still like, here, cracking a can, like, yeah, well done, boys.
It's frowned upon, but like if you speak to anyone who got to experience that, it's the best thing ever.
Fucking mate, that's why I play.
After a win,
that's why you play.
A beer in the change room, and it's, you know, what we were talking about before, it's that like banter in the change room, it's that like camaraderie, it's all the boys getting a bit boisterous and stuff like that. Like when you,
it's important for like culture.
When you're bringing in a carton of Heineken after a game, when you're on that field, if we fucking win this game,
that's what you
have
get.
A few beers in the change room. It's going to be a good feel, and then it creates this like vibe, this winning vibe of like it's like a reward for winning.
It's so true. It sounds like we're taking the piss, but we're being genuinely serious there. Like,
I'm dead serious.
Yeah, like because you run a bit harder, you're like, I want that beer after the game, or you don't want to leave because like the culture's so good here. So it's like keeps the continuity.
It's a vibe, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's a proper vibe. It's a winning vibe. Like, I mean, and even now, like a lot of, especially in the A-League, like the ones that we know, like all the winning teams, like they're always celebrating together.
Yeah, the best teams on and off the
culture.
field.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you've got the teams that, they hate each other and, as soon as the game's done, they're all gone their separate ways. Like it's not the same feeling. Yeah. It's like you got to build this sort of like winning culture and vibe where like a couple of beers after the game is, physically, as long as you're all right. Like it's...
Hey guys, just a quick break in this episode to share that I have partnered with Dabble, the gambling agency. Dabble is an incredible platform. It's similar to Instagram where you can copy bets off some of the absolute superstars of various games. It's absolutely awesome. Please make sure you do gamble responsibly, only bet what you can. And also, big news, for the next 12 months, I'm going to be doing a Tuesday stream between 7 and 8 p.m. where I'm going to be talking all sports, putting on bets with you guys and having absolute fun. You can find that within the Dabble app and it's there, as I said, every Tuesday night, 7 to 8 p.m, the Jake Barkadash live show. Make sure we see you there and we'll get back into the episode. But anyway, back to my point, because why Newcastle was such a big few seasons for you. Not only were you leading the line at a young age when I personally think the A-League was at one of its best or most competitive because every team was stacked. Visa players were good. Aussie players were middle-aged, still playing here and sort of stuff like that. But then you got a massive move overseas, which was like, I still to this day don't know how that happened or like was that they were always onto you or what sort of that move was, but going to Fulham, I just remember everyone was like, holy fuck, like that's a huge move. Because were they in the championship?
Yeah, they'd just been relegated. From the Prem to the championship. So yeah, I mean, when I went there, they still had a lot of the Premier League players, a lot of left as well, which always happens when you drop down. But yeah, it was a massive move. It sort of came out of the blue a little bit. It was whilst I was at the World Cup. And I was about to go to Holland, like had a club in Holland that I was pretty keen to go to. And then Fulham came in sort of, very close to when I was about to sign with this other club. And I guess at that age, you're sort of thinking, like, I can't turn down.
You can't Fulham, though, can you? Like, did you feel though, like being objective now at 29, even though I 100% agree with what you said, do you think it was the right move? Like,
probably not, obviously in hindsight's a wonderful thing, but
you kind of know, maybe you kind of, part of you might even know at the time, but you can't not take it.
You can't not take it. It's exactly what I thought at the time.
Yeah.
You could go to Holland, it was a smaller club in Holland, or, you go to Fulham, who in the championship is going to be one of the biggest clubs and, a club who's expected to go back up. You're sort of thinking like, fuck, I'm at the World Cup. If I go to Fulham and I'm playing there, like that's takeoff, It didn't work out that way. I didn't play football for like 12 months or something like that my first year. And I think in those sorts of places, like
was that just coaching decisions or was that injuries?
Like I had surgery, probably needed surgery like as soon as I'd got there. That got put off for a few months. Finally had surgery like 6 months later. And then, rehab went well. First session back slipped and like tore where the surgery was, and then was pretty much out for the rest of the season with that. And then I think what I'd learnt as well, like, starts are so important. Like how you start at a new club is massive, because when you turn up there, no one knows what you can do. No one knows if you're good enough to do it. So to get the chance is like one of the hardest things. But when you first go to a club, they're obviously more likely they're not going to give you that chance because they've signed you, so they have to see what you can do. But then, for me in that situation, once the sort of 12 months had passed and hadn't played football, you're just like, you're trying to play catch ups. It's like, it's so hard to do. You want to go there in form, fit and ready to fire straight away. And usually when you can do that, it will give you a little bit more longevity. If it's not at that club, but clubs around you or in that league who have seen what you can do, and know that obviously if they get the best out of you, then you can perform at this level.
Yeah. You know what? I think also because now we're a bit older and like obviously you've had more experience in the game, when you're like going to Fulham, you're like, your only option is like, I need to score 10, 15 goals first season. Anything else is like a failure and you feel like shit if it doesn't work out or whatever. But now you look back, you're like, probably that was like a character defining part of your career that dictated the rest to be so good. Like, because every other overseas move you've had since, particularly in Asia, you've banged in goals everywhere. So probably that you kind of relate that experience to helping you with that sort of stuff.
Yeah, massively. And to be honest, that period of going to Fulham sort of haunts me a little bit, you know.
Really?
And it was one of the biggest motivating factors behind like going to Korea and then to Japan.
Yeah.
You know, because after I came back to the A-League, as much as I was enjoying myself and like I loved playing football for Perth Glory and you know, you're playing every week, you're scoring goals, you know, especially in that period, there was good players at the club. Playing at home was great, but I always had this thing hanging over my head where I was like, I went to Europe, but I didn't feel like I did it, you know, like I went there and obviously had the 12 months without playing. And then 6 months later, you know, after going on loan to Dundee, you know, I came back to the A-League and I just didn't like that feeling I didn't like that taste in my mouth where I was like, I don't feel like I did something enough to be proud of that, you know, period. And so I always had this thing where I was like, I need to go back overseas and do something, you know, wherever that is. And obviously that ended up Korea and Japan. And when I went there, I was giving myself no other option but to do well there.
Suwon, and like we're going, because I want to talk about still around the period of Fulham, but the Suwon Blue Wings record, goal record is like goal every two games. And you played like 60 games or 60 odd games, which is,
I mean, and that was
a tough league, man. It's not easy career.
It was funny because, you know, before I'd went there, I was, you know, speaking to, you know, people who are respected in, you know, medical departments, mates who had been there and stuff like that. And everyone was telling me, don't go. It's so hard on your body. And, you know, like if you break down there, you're fucked. And I just thought, fuck it, I'm doing it. And I'll make it work. And then, like you said, I ended up playing like 60 games or something like that in the one season. And for me, that was actually the biggest success, was just staying fit for 60 games. Because I always knew, like, if I stayed fit wherever I went, I'd feel confident that I can score goals, you know? And then obviously when I went to Korea, that was just my main focus. I'm like, I'm just going to fucking stay fit and the rest will take care of itself. And I was doing all sorts to stay fit.
Well, yeah, just like...
had a reformer in my house. I bought a reformer. Had a reformer in my... I've got a video of it. Funny enough, it actually...
So now you don't have one. You just
I go to a Pilates studio
right.
now, you know?
You had a reformer.
I had a reformer in my house. I actually ended up, you know, me and doing my Pilates and my reformer in my house on the Korean news.
We need to find that clip, Brayden.
I've got it on my phone.
You have to send it to us.
What is it, you know, I think I was doing a media thing.
Bruv.
They were asking me, you know, how are you staying fit and able to play all these games? And I said, well, bros, I've got a fucking reformer in my house.
Come have a look.
And then it got around and then they all, you know, this big news crew came over.
Half the team just start putting reformers in their fucking house, did they?
I was, you know, like I was like staying at the training ground all day pretty much, just like getting massages, gym, like eating there. I was going to like a different recovery center, like in Suwon for stuff. Like that was just my main focus, and obviously it worked.
So if like, what you put in was kind of what you got out in a sense.
Yeah. Like it was draining, you know, like by the end of like the last month of the season, I was like, wow, like I'm just so fucking drained. You know, like I had practically no life outside of football.
Yeah.
You know, I just pretty much dedicated everything to that, especially that first year. You know, but it's definitely my proudest year, like looking back, just more so knowing like how hard it is. You know, you speak to the boys that have gone there, like it's a hard place to play. You know, there's a lot of games. They're all so fit and strong.
They train like twice a day sometimes, a lot, don't
training's hard and long.
Rashid told me that's what Mahazi, one of my best mates, when he was at Incheon, he's like, they do double sessions, but like usually in Australia, if you do double session, one might be a little bit harder, one's a bit more. He goes, but they're both fucking ridiculously hard.
Crazy, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and the funny thing, like the Korean boys are feeling it as well, but they've done it their whole life, you know, so they're like, their body's adapted to it. But for us, like when you first go over, when you first get there, you're like, wow, this is fucking hard.
Insane. Yeah. Oh, mate. So one of the famous photos and experiences around you, and it's definitely one of my proudest things watching you do, and I'm no doubt yours, but the 2014 World Cup, because you were kind of like a little bit of a bolter to get into that squad, and then it's all of a sudden like it's probably for me. I thought this is going to be one of the biggest World Cups ever because it's like in Brazil, and it's like we've just come off a couple of World Cups. The Socceroos are doing well, and is now the coach. All this, there was so much stuff around it, and we had so many players. And then like you see Taggart gets in the squad, you're like fuck, and then it's like game one. Like I think were we playing Spain?
No, Spain was the last one.
Oh, so sorry, the Spain game you started. Which other game did you come on?
Came on against Holland.
Which was game 2.
Game 2, yeah. First game was Chile,
First game was Chile, that's right. Yeah, so when you started against Spain, I was like, holy fuck. There was PK and Ramos. There's a photo of you like in between them. And they were just like two fucking towers over you. Did you, just to speak about that World Cup experience, like, did you know you were going to get in that squad? Like, what was your mentality and the feedback you were getting before that was picked?
I think, like, obviously, a lot of people know about Ange now. Like, you don't have too much communication, with him. And I actually think that's kind of good. Like, I really respect the way that he does it. So I guess, going through those camps, like, I didn't really know, like, if I'd be selected in that final squad, because obviously they take a few more boys for that sort of extended training period. But I guess when you're so young like that, you're just almost like oblivious to everything. You don't realize like the magnitude of a World Cup. You don't realize like the magnitude of the players around you either. It's always looking back that I'm like, fucking hell, wow. But
do you reckon that being a bit naive helped you? Because like you didn't.
Yeah, I look back and I'm like, fuck, I wish I really took it in a little bit more. It was obviously amazing at the time, but like I said, I think it's just that magnitude was just on another level to like what I realized was going on at the time. But yeah, getting selected, it was like I knew it was the night that the boys were getting told. So I was sitting in my room just like waiting to get the knock on my door to say, you need to go speak to Ange and obviously, pack up your stuff and that. And my birthday was the next morning. It was like, I think it was June 1st.
How old were you then? Because
I was 20.
I remember thinking, because I was still playing pro football, I remember thinking like Tags just made it. Like out of all the boys in the AS, I was like, fuck, you've actually made it. Like we all still can, but I'm like, you're at the World Cup.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? That's fucked.
Yeah, and I was waiting for this knock on the door or a phone call to say go speak to him. We got to like midnight. And I was messaging my mum and I was thinking, fucking hell, they're leaving it a bit late. Like, fucking, it's midnight. You know what I mean? So I thought, fuck it, I'll just go to set. I woke up the next morning and then like we're going to breakfast and obviously some of the boys were walking in with their suitcases. And I was thinking, fucking hell, have I got in the squad? And that was pretty much how I found out.
So like silent treatment.
It was like if you didn't get told you weren't going, then you're in the squad. And then obviously that morning at breakfast, they obviously had a chat to all the boys and said, such and such is, are going home. And obviously, the rest of you guys are staying here, obviously to play in the World Cup. And I was sitting there thinking on my birthday, I was like, fuck, man.
Oh my God, bro.
So that was it.
That is crazy. What can you just give us some insight? Like we've spoken a lot on the World Cup of late, so we won't delve into it, but just that moment, like you're 20 years old, you're playing against Spain, you're coming on against Holland, that game, like Tim Cahill's, these are fucking the pinnacle of football type moments. Like,
yeah, I think with all that stuff, like that's where I truly realized like what football was.
Really?
I think growing up and stuff like that, you see football, you're playing, obviously, blah, blah, blah. I think like being in those moments, like when I saw Timmy score that goal and we were all warming up on the side, you're just like wow, this is literally what football is.
Yeah.
And it was like those sort of moments have always been like such a big motivating factor because you just like that level or that whole thing, being a World Cup is fucking crazy. And it's like you just can't put it into words of like being involved in it and like seeing those things live, knowing that like you could play a part in this, is just there's nothing to.
Yeah, dude, that's crazy. So like when you say the purpose of like football, what football meant, is it because of like how big those moments were and how much it affects people that are attached to it, like back home or in the stadium?
Exactly.
You see how big the game is.
Like,
what you mean?
The way that it affects people, like the atmosphere, like, you always talk about Timmy scoring that goal. You're just like, you've just done that at a World Cup.
What the fuck was that?
It's that, when you're playing a big game and you just like, it's so hard to have those big moments because of like, there's so much on the line. So the intensity of everything is just on another level.
Yeah.
That it's almost it's not human.
One, to think to volley that on your opposite foot, and then two, to execute it in that game is what you're trying to say, right?
Yeah, and you're playing against these top nations, and obviously we didn't go through past the group stages, but the way that sort of the boys are playing, you're just this is proper football. Like this is nothing I've ever experienced or been a part of before. To see what it's all about, you know?
Yeah. Does it, because you've had that experience so young, and you've actually been in some fucking really good form over the last few years and whatnot, is that something that is still burning or a chip on your shoulder to be back in that squad? Because I don't see why you wouldn't be in and around the squad or in contention.
Yeah, I mean, I think, being involved in that World Cup, it always, gave me that motivation to be in another one. But more so in general to be back in the national team, because obviously the importance of it, the buzz around it, that sort of level that you could be playing at, to experience those moments again. So that was always a big motivating factor. And going to Suwon was, one of the reasons. I thought, well, people have done it before. They've gone to Korea, done well, and they'll get the national team. Maybe that's my way in, so that's why I did it. And then I obviously was involved in that 4-year cycle, and then obviously missed out at the last hurdle. But I guess it was definitely scratched a bit of that itch to be back involved for that period of time,
Bro, this is fucking crazy, right? If you break it down this way, this is just for people back home to understand exactly what being a professional footballer is. So you've decided to go play in Korea where no one speaks English. You've spoken before about what you gave to the game, to get the best out of yourself. You banged in freaking 30 goals in 60 games almost. Then you've gone to Japan. You've actually had probably a not as good record, but you still banged in a lot of goals, 1 in 3 type stuff there. And you were there for 4 years and you just missed out. Do you know what I mean? You've given all that to just miss out, but that's what it takes. Because sometimes you get the other way. In 2014. Where you're where are you fucking going?
Yeah, I mean, well, that's what's always given me a more positive outlook on this. Yeah, on missing out on the final squad for this one. But I guess for me, if I didn't go through that graft of 4 years and then missed out, I'd always be kicking myself. But I think looking back, I've got absolutely no regrets because I gave absolutely everything. I dedicated my life to. Over these 4 years, especially to be part of the national team to try and go to a World Cup, that I was I've got nothing on me to say that I didn't do, everything that I could have. Obviously if you don't get selected, you're not selected and that's that. But if I didn't do everything to try and get selected, I think that's what would have obviously gave me a lot more disappointment, within myself.
Yeah. I feel now probably as a mature player coming into the A-League, it's one of the first times in the A-League history where if you're playing well, you can feel confident that the head coach of Socceroos, Arnie, is going to pick you. Because historically it was unless you're young, you got to go overseas and you got to be that but now I think you can come here if you're doing well, Arnie picks you, which is probably for you, gives you confidence about being back here.
I think that's good. Obviously, you're promoting the A-League and those sort of selections, especially for the young boys playing in the A-League, probably puts them in a bigger transfer window to get a move to a good overseas club or to really kick their career forward a little bit. Coming back, I've spoken about it with other people. Coming back it had nothing to do with the Socceroos. It's nice to know that if you're doing well in this league, then you will get selected for the squads. It's obviously been proven now under Arnie, and he's obviously got another 4 years. But I guess my decision to go overseas was all about the Socceroos.
So you were just that done with the lifestyle of what overseas was that regardless of Socceroos or anything, you're I just want to play here now.
Yeah,
I want to have that
play
experience
here and enjoy
again.
my football, and I think especially when you're that hyper focused on playing well and improving and getting in a national team, in those countries where they obviously don't speak the same language, it takes its toll on you.
Yeah.
And as much as I actually loved the football there, especially in Japan in those last couple of years, that's proper football, that place.
You loved it,
just everything, the professionalism, the standard of players, the standing of training, the games.
Stadiums, everything equality, aren't
stadiums, especially in that first year with COVID was a different story, but the second year when you could obviously pack out the stadiums, it's proper football there.
That's amazing.
And I did really enjoy it.
That's crazy. Now, just before we round this up, like, you've always been a pretty cool dude and like social dude off the field in the sense, and like you're one of the ones that I noticed early, like would always have the same friends as a kid or would do the same things, and like probably in my eyes, what I see now is like you always had good balance of like both. Like what's kind of stuff you're doing like back home to enjoy yourself? Like it'd just be catching up with people. You're going for like, you know, surfing a few beers. Try not to bait you too hard there.
No beers.
No beers, yeah.
No, I think, yeah, like, you know, you're right. For me growing up, like I always, you know, had a really close group of schoolmates. And we're all still best mates now. And that was something I found hard living overseas. I didn't have a balance. Like it was just pure football. So, you know, and that was something I craved a lot, like just having that, like you can go for a coffee, you can go out for dinner here. Like
yeah,
I was just eating in restaurants by myself most nights.
Fuck, man, no mates.
Not trying to read the menu.
That's crazy.
So like that balance is important to me. Like,
yeah.
And I think it always reflects on my football as well. Like when I'm happy off the field, I'm always better on the field as well.
One of the biggest compliments I could give you is that I felt like you were born to score, a bit like Jamie. But with that, I'm like, I always wonder what would you do outside of football? And because you're getting to like 30 and like you probably want to play till you're 30, like whatever. Do you start thinking of that now? Like have you planted any seeds in what that might look like?
I've got a seed planted, yeah. Actually, I go to uni.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I study part-time at uni. I do 1 unit a semester.
That's cute, bro. Good on you.
Cute.
It's better than nothing.
I've dabbled and done 2 a couple of times, but that was too much.
It's too much, yeah.
Know? Especially when like during season when you're traveling and stuff like that, it's definitely tough. I study exercise science at university. More so because it's, you know, that question like I've always asked myself, like what would I do, or like, you know, what's important to me away from football. I thought, well, not much really, you know, but like what's my passion or what do I care about? And I always thought like, well, like if I had some of the people who I've had in my career, for example, like Andrew Clark at the Socceroos, who've had like, you know, such a positive impact on me, like physically and like how to stay injury free and, you know, have this sort of support to like do what you want to do on the field. Yeah. Like if I could do that for someone else, you know, having been involved in the game, then, you know, I think that would still give me a buzz when, you know, playing football's over. So
there you go.
Slowly ticking away at that.
Well, you got 3.5 years you signed for Glory.
3.5 years, yeah.
So fuck you. Could take you to the end, bruv.
Yeah, I'll have to pick up a few more units.
It's going to be hard. It's going to put it this way. It's going to be hard to get you out of the Glory between now and the end, I reckon. Like, because you love it here. I think you also said like you want to give some of your best years to the club too. Yeah. Do you come in like, for instance, this season? Like, do you come in with like a goal or goals in mind, or you just like take it as it comes kind of guy? Like,
I mean, look, I normally do, but I'd never like to say it. You know, wouldn't even tell my mum.
Oh, that's good.
But you know, I think, similar to what I was saying before in terms of like if you're happy off the field, you normally translate on the field. Like I can definitely be someone who gets really hyper focused about like succeeding and doing well and stuff like that. That a lot of my focus is to actually not think about it when I leave the training ground or, you know, after I leave the stadium and stuff like that, because like it drives me into, you know, this crazy like obsessed with scoring and obsessed with winning. That I try and like do the opposite like when I leave now. And so my focus is more like, just to enjoy myself and stay relaxed off the field so you can do your stuff when you get on the field.
Lovely. Well said. Now, final question. It's a bit of a tradition on this show. We equate 3 traits to being successful in any walk of life, and obviously all are important, but pick the one that resonates most to you in your career. Is out of resilience, drive, or ambition. Which one for you was critical to be leading the line?
I think resilience.
Resilience, number one.
I think, you know, like you obviously got to have the others, you know, but I think the resilience, once you step into a world that's like a high pressure environment where you're like, you have to succeed under pressure all the time, you need to be able to, you need to have that resilience, because you're going to have so many failures and so many setbacks that if you don't have resilience, like the other 2 aren't going to matter.
Yeah. Well, Tags, it finally got you on the show, mate. You're finally in Australia. You've been living MIA, mate. I'm buzzing to see you back in the A-League doing well, kicking goals. I'm sure we'll have you on here again sometime, man, having a proper laugh, maybe a cheeky beer in the off-season or something. But thank you for coming on the show, man.
Perfect. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it, guys. We'll see you next week.